Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdog's Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, I have 3 stories involving a cryptid Catman, Bigfoot, and Dogman, folks. All the stories are very, very thrilling. Let's get into the first story, titled, Bay County, Florida, upright Black Panther encounter witness describes a 9-foot-tall feline that rose in the road, and read exactly what the witness actually saw, folks. In July 2007, along Highway 22 between Panama City and Weehawken in Bay County, Florida, a woman and her mother reported an encounter that went far beyond a routine big cat sighting. What first looked like a large black animal moving through roadside grass suddenly stepped into the highway, then rose upright in full view, leaving both witnesses stunned and forcing a difficult question: what kind of feline stands like a man and calmly walks away? Let's read the full account now. My mother and I were driving eastbound on Highway 22 between Panama City and Weehawken, Florida, sometime between 7:15 and 7:30 in the morning. In July 2007, we had just gone to the bank and we were heading back home. It was a sunny morning, the windows were down, and we were just talking as we drove. We were the only vehicle on that stretch of road. On both sides, there were several acres of open farmland with long lines of pine trees further back. As we drove, I noticed something black moving through the reed grass off the roadside. At first, I assumed it was a dog because I could only make out the hindquarters. It was not running. It was simply moving through the grass at a steady pace. As I slowed the truck, I realized the animal was larger than I had first thought. It was probably about 150 yards away when it suddenly jumped into the middle of the road. At that point, it was down on all fours, and my immediate impression was that I was looking at a huge black panther. I stopped the truck and both of us just stared at it. Then without warning, the creature rose up onto its hind legs and just stood there facing us. We were in a Chevy Colorado and it was squarely facing the front of the truck. My best estimate is that it stood around 9 to 10 feet tall. I was shocked and confused. My mother, who was sitting in the passenger seat and was in her 70s at the time, immediately started screaming. She was terrified. What I saw was not a normal animal. It had a large head, though not oversized for the rest of the body, pointed cat ears, and a distinctly feline nose. Its eyes were greenish and gray and looked like a cat's eyes. The chest was broad, the arms were long and muscular, but not overly bulky, and the hands were elongated with pads on the inside and huge razor-like claws. Its lower body was also cat-like, with large legs and enormous feet. In fact, the feet looked so oversized that at a glance they almost gave the impression of having 4 feet instead of 2. Its body was covered in thick, shiny black hair. I also noticed a short tail with what looked like a curl or ball on the end. At no point did it open its mouth, so I never saw its teeth. Even so, I had the distinct impression that it was male, and I remember thinking that if it wanted to move fast, it probably could, and probably close the distance between these witnesses and their car in an eye blink, folks, and probably rip its way in through the windshield or through one of the doors. I would have to say, folks, that these women were lucky. This sounds like it could possibly be some new unknown type of cryptid, folks. I've heard of other cat-like cryptids before, folks, but usually they're alien big cats, like basically in, well, reports coming from England. Catmen, well, that's kind of rare, but not totally unheard of, folks. If you look at UFO mythology, there's supposedly a giant species of cat people that supposedly exists, so maybe this was a member of it. I don't know, but certainly very interesting. But let's finish off this story now, folks. What struck me most was that it did not behave aggressively. It simply looked at us, almost as though it was wondering why we were there. There was no charge, no threat display, and no rush toward the vehicle. After a short time, it turned and walked off across the field. The strangest part was the way it moved on its hind legs. It seemed to flow rather than stomp or lumber. It eventually disappeared from sight. The whole encounter lasted maybe 2 to 3 minutes. Afterward, my mother told me she had felt overwhelming fear and believed the creature was going to eat her alive. I did not feel the same way. I was more confused than anything else. My main thought was wondering why it had allowed us to see it so clearly. I drove that road many times after that, but I never saw it again. I eventually moved away from the area W. Wow, that was quite the story, folks. Did W and her mother actually encounter an alien being, folks? Like from UFO mythology? It sounds reasonable. You could explain what it was, folks, but I'm not quite sure. Let's now move over to the next article, folks. Bigfoot and cryptid canine activity at Bald Eagle State Park, Pennsylvania. Wood knocks, growls, footprints, and nighttime pursuit. Let's read these stories, folks, from this article and hear about various encounters with these two particular cryptids. A new report from Bald Eagle State Park in Center County, Pennsylvania, adds another unsettling piece to an already active cluster of Bigfoot and anomalous predator claims from the same general area. What makes this latest count stand out is not only the close-range wood knocks and growls, but also how neatly it fits into a broader pattern of vocalizations, heavy footfalls, possible tracks, night harassment, and visual signs tied to Bald Eagle State Park, nearby ridge corridors, and the Spring Creek Gamelands area. Bald Eagle State Park itself sits in a broad, habitat-rich corridor of forests, fields, wetlands, and water with campgrounds and extensive surrounding wildland that could support repeated, unexplained activity. So it sounds like, from the description, folks, Bald Eagle State Park would be the place that most people would encounter dogmen or Bigfoot, folks, because it sounds like this park would be the kind of place they would inhabit, at least in the deeper woods. But let's read on and read the first story, folks, and hear what it's about. I received the following new submission from RB regarding incidents at Bald Eagle State Park. Me and my dad were camping and needed some wood, so we went about 50 feet in the woods and were getting some dead wood and were about to go back to camp when we heard a loud knock come from about 30 feet away. Then about 5 seconds later, we heard a loud growl, so me and him ran back to our camp and were shocked by what we have heard. Me and him believe in Bigfoot, so we thought it was a Bigfoot, though we are not sure. The growl was different than anything I had ever heard in my life. Later that night, we had something rubbing on our tent, but we thought it was a bear, but we do not know what it was. So, could this have been an account of both a Bigfoot and a dogman? The growl sounds reminiscent of various dogman encounters, folks, but it can't be for sure 100%. The other activity is definitely stuff I've seen with Bigfoot, especially the tent rubbing, which I've seen Bigfoot sometimes do, and the wood knocks as well sound like something we've heard about before with other Bigfoot stories, folks. So, make of that what you will. Let's get to the next account. One such report that we're going to read next is from R.A., who said that during the first week of October 2020, he was staying in a cabin near the campground area at Bald Eagle State Park. At around 6:30 p.m., he walked outside and noticed movement in the hemlocks. At approximately 50 yards, he observed what he described as a huge dark-haired hominid moving toward Pine Creek. He said he could hear the footfalls as the creature moved through the forest and watched it for about 20 seconds as it stepped over a small creek and continued away from him. He described it as at least 8 feet tall, with massive shoulders, dark brown hair, a more human than ape-like face, a conical head, and a prominent brow ridge. Later that same night, around 1 o'clock a.m., he heard a series of wood knocks and whoops coming from multiple directions. He was adamant that this was not a black bear, an animal he knew well from the area. So indeed, folks, it probably wasn't that. But could he have basically heard dogman as well? We can't be for sure. As I said, the first story sounds more like it was Bigfoot, but we can't be for sure because the growl sounds different from other Bigfoot, well, encounters I've heard about, folks. It sounded reminiscent of dogman encounters, but definitely I felt that there was a Bigfoot basically nearby as well, especially with it somehow alerting the dogman to the presence of these two men at the time. And what about the second encounter, folks, with the entity that this man said had a conical head? That is testament to most, or basically a great many Bigfoot stories where said entities have a big conical-like head like this, folks. So that is definitely a Bigfoot that he saw. All I can say is that both stories, including the Catman encounter, folks, or should I say this unknown cryptid, because we don't know what it was, folks. It could be an alien, or it could be an interdimensional enveloper. The fact that people are seeing these things is what is happening, folks. And it seems like these encounters are increasing. So why? What is drawing these entities to people, folks? You think that if they're intelligent at all, because you get the, feeling that the panther-like entity that this woman and her mother encountered was intelligent, but was also surprised at the presence of these two people. So maybe it crossed over from some other world and was there. Either way, folks, we're at the end. So please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics, they're bad for you. You can use the YouTube link down below in the descriptions or the chat to go subscribe to me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure to hit the part of the bell that give you all future notifications. And please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Until next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.